Dumb Husky and his white cat SHIZUN. Extra chapters. SHIZUN'S birthday. Fighting for affection, Part 5. When Taxi and June entered the box of thoughts, the tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster was sitting in the landscaped garden that Moran had built, chasing butterflies with its short legs. When it heard the sound of his arrival, it immediately turned its head, but because it stopped so abruptly, it almost stumbled and fell to the ground. With great difficulty, it staggered to its feet. The tyrant rice cake monster stretched out its little paws to adjust the lotus leaf on its head and shouted, "Hey, hey, hey, hey. Young man, you are finally here. I was getting bored to death." Taxi and June stared at it for a moment and came to a conclusion, what a silly housekeeper. He then turned his eyes away from it. Then he used that pair of sharp eyes to thoroughly size up the cottage in front of him. The cottage was not completely built yet, but it was almost done. Taxi and June could fully appreciate the landscape, especially the garden with its glittering flower plants where little fairies were playing music between the stamen of each flower, the golden flowing pond, the tree house twined by vines, and the shell summer sofa in the courtyard. Taxi and June's face became gloomy. He knew Chu Wanning well. Chu Wanning looked like a stern individual, but in reality, he was someone interested in curios. He would certainly like this type of otherworldly things. The only thing that Chu Wanning would dislike about this was if he turned his head and stared at the tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster. When he opened his mouth, what came out was, "How much would all of this cost?" The tyrant rice cake monster didn't respond immediately. As it was not yet aware of the switch in personality of the man in front of it, it was somewhat confused as it commented, "What a silly man." Taxi and June's brows knitted as he lifted his arms and grabbed the Fae by the neck. Who are you calling silly?" The hands of the tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster dropped from out of its pocket where it was putting the butterflies it caught, and its eyes turned white as Taxi and June strangled it. It shook its legs and tried to talk in broken human language. "Huh? What's going on?" Taxi and June. It seemed it was a misunderstanding. With a cold hum, he loosened his 5 fingers and threw the monster back on the ground. The tyrant rice cake monster touched its neck as it exhaled heavily. It then looked up at the man's apparently hazy face, and suddenly had a realization. Oh. This is not Grandmaster Mo. They all know that Moran's personality changes every 3 days. Since it hasn't happened for a while, it forgot about it. Now who was in front of it was clearly the vicious and violent version of Moran instead of the one who has been kind to it for the past 2 days. Ah! The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster uttered a scream and got up and was ready to flee. Help! He's here. It wasn't him who came back. It was too scared to stutter. The 2 soft rice cake legs of the tyrant rice cake monster strode hard, as it closed its eyes and ran as fast as it could. When it opened its eyes, it realized that it was still where it was. It didn't know that Taxi and June put it in a spiritual cage where it was running on a rolling wheel, just like a hamster who was running for half a day but has gone nowhere. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster swallowed its saliva and trembled as it turned its back, embarrassed and frightened. Geg. Are you looking for death? Who is your brother? Emperor, good. Taxi and June once again. In order to survive, the tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster succumbed to the cruel authority of Taxi and June. It told the Emperor everything about the box of thoughts and answered the question he posed earlier. No, it's cheap here. Taxi and June fell into silence. It was not expensive, it's not wasteful, and it's something that man put effort on. How would he find a gift that could compare with this? Damn, he was sure lucky to find out about this earlier. With Wanning's birthday so close, if Grandmaster Mo played this card, his loss was certain. Taxi and June's heart lurched. He must take advantage of this opportunity as it might never come again. While he still had time, he must even out the playing field. His handsome face flickered with blurred shadows. He stared at the landscape and cottage built by Grandmaster Mo as he listened to the chattering tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster was explaining, you have to bring things from outside to exchange with beautiful materials inside with 4. These building materials are not the best now. The materials you brought to exchange 2 days ago does not worth much. Oh? Really? Taxi and June proved, but this sea of flowers looks very valuable. Those are gifts by 4. Taxi and June pointed to the pond again, this pond does not look cheap either. 4 exchanged this for the best thing you have. Taxi and Jun's ears raised when he heard this, the best thing. 4. What was it? If he can afford it, then this venerable one could surely afford it as well. When the tyrant rice cake monster heard this, its mung bean eyes lit up and asked, you will bring me candy? Well then, we like the candy made by the immortal divine wood. Taxi and June. He was wrong. This was not something he could afford. If there was one thing in this world that he hoarded to the point of paranoia and would never exchange for anything, that would be the things that Chu Wanning cooked. In this respect, Grandmaster Mo was vastly different from him. Grandmaster Mo never experienced the life he lived in the Wushan Palace as a living corpse. He never knew of the suffocating loneliness or how to madly missed having the dishes that may not have been delicious but at least was warm. Therefore, Grandmaster Mo never developed a morbid obsession with Chu Wanning's cooking. On the contrary, Grandmaster Mo wanted to make others appreciate Chu Wanning's cooking and thus would happily share it with other people and the spiritual creatures living in the mountain and its surrounding forests, which in turn would make Chu Wanning happy. So, when he heard how much the tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster liked the candy that Chu Wanning made, he was very willing to share them to it. But Taxi and June is different. Taxi and June was like a poor destitute person who has been starved for 10 years. Thus, he craved and hoarded the food that Chu Wanning cooked with a vengeance. Even if it was unpalatable, he would still swallow it hungrily and thirst for it. Even if he knew he would get a stomachache because of it, he would still be unwilling to share it. It was so ridiculous that once, Chu Wanning cooked enough sweets that should be enough to last for half a month. At that time, Taxi and June knew that he would switch place with Grandmaster Mo the next day. He did not want his other self to have any of the sweets that Chu Wanning made, and thus, he ate all the sweets that should have been consumed slowly in half a month's time before Grandmaster Mo's returned. As a result, Grandmaster Mo spent the next 3 days bedridden with stomachache. So, upon hearing how the tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster was coveting the candy that Chu Wanning cooked, he immediately flared up in anger, don't even think about it. The candy that Chu Wanning made can only be eaten by this venerable one. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster looked at him with tears in its eyes. It's no use crying. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster wipes its eyes with its paws, hoo. This Taxi and June is really no good. Since the candy can't be exchanged, Taxi and June began thinking of alternatives. Tell this venerable one, aside from candy, what else could this venerable one exchange for more exquisite and valuable fey materials? The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster choked and did not want to answer but knew that it have to. The emperor can exchange things that he used, that was imbued with his spiritual essence. Taxi and June frowned and asked, is this what Grandmaster Mo did? Well, the tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster said grievously, 2 days ago, you exchanged the robes you were wearing with the flower field. So he took off his clothes, he murmured, pinched his chin and thought for a while and felt that he could not lose to himself. So, he also took off his robe and handed it to the tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster. This is the robes of this venerable one. Take a good look at it and see what you can exchange. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster examined the robes for a long time while keeping quiet all the while. Taxi and June got a little impatient as he hesitatingly poked half of its head under the lotus leaf behind his robes. Emperor, exchanging, exchanging with Fey materials is not up to 4. 4 does not make the rules of exchanging. Please don't strangle 4. Say less nonsense and talk. What on earth can I exchange? The bullied rice cake monster's voice was as tiny as mosquitoes singing as it said, natural replenishing, pollution-free. Pollution-free. Wash water. Taxi and June thought he had misheard, foot wash water. 4. Flowing wash water. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster looked like it was weeping all day as it continued, 3 days of using the wash water which was nourished with natural herbs, you will become stronger and more powerful than now. Taxi and June went stiff, his face as dark as the bottom of the cooking pot as he said, I'm sorry to say this but do you want to die? What? No. I don't want to die. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster shook its head and burst into tears anew. How come when you exchange with him, it was a sea of flowers while with me it was wash water? Do I look like I need this kind of thing, huh? Wah, you don't need. Think of something else. Exchange it with another thing. I can't. The look in Taxi and Jun's eye was horrible. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster cried out repeatedly, 4 is not the one deciding. 4 has to follow the rule of the Fey world. What rule? Stop blubbering. Believe it or not, this venerable one can kill you. It's useless even if you get rid of me. You will only lose your only guide. You. Taxi and June choked with suppressed anger. All right, forget it. In the face of greater good, one must endure the mercy of the sea and the sky. He also needed the help of this rice cake monster to defeat his opponent, Grandmaster Mo. So, he swallowed all the curses he wanted to spit out and tried to calm himself. With gritted teeth he asked, then tell this venerable one immediately what do you need to exchange. He pointed at the landscape that was almost finished and continued, to get better items than these. I can't say too much. The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster choked. The Emperor Taxi and June jumped violently as veins almost broke through his muscles. He threatened angrily and said, don't say that or this venerable one will really cut you. Wah! There was no way out of this. In order to not be knocked out flat and turned into an Osman thus rice cake to be eaten, the tyrant rice cake had to sit on the stump as it chokingly began to reveal the exchanging rules to Taxi and June. It took a long while before it used its plump little short paws to rummage through its belly pocket and pulled out a tattered little book made of tree bark and reluctantly handed it over to Taxi and June. It then staggered in front of Taxi and June. Taxi and June was not polite either as he took the book and immediately scanned its pages. Goddess of the flower. This is not good. Chu Wanning won't be happy with this. Supreme Cook. It's not interesting either. This type of talent, no one has it better than this venerable one. No one else has to do it. Taxi and June frowned disdainfully at what he was reading until suddenly, he found something interesting. Flowering rain, a cloud that would float over a courtyard upon acquisition and will constantly sprinkle petals down. Taxi and June who have exquisite taste and thought he would get praised for this. He declared, this is good. What can I exchange for this? The tyrant rice cake stretched out his paws weakly and turned a page for him. Behind it was written the following words, exchange terms, living people. Taxi and June suddenly widened his eyes and exclaimed, living people? Live sacrifice. It's not as horrible as you were thinking. The tyrant rice cake monster buzzed and said, it just meant grabbing someone and shutting them inside the box. If they are inside then the cloud rains, if they get out, the rain stops. It's all very literal and civilized. Then why do you need to shut people in here? The tyrant Osman thus rice cake monster poked its 2 soft little forefingers together with some embarrassment as it explained, it's because there is no other person in the box. Fact is, 4 was kept here by our village so 4 can come and open the door so everyone can come over to visit. The Fays in your village wants to come here for a visit. The tyrant rice cake monster continued to rub his hands with embarrassment. 4. Fine, I understand the story, but how could this venerable one do such an absurd thing? The tyrant rice cake then replied, you can also use to exchange other things, but living people of the highest level would be the best. Wait a minute. As soon as Taxi and June heard the word highest level, he quickly interjected and asked, so living people of the highest level would yield the best exchange? Tyrant rice cake monster, yes, yes. Taxi and June snapped shut the book made of tree bark and embraced his arms with excitement and determination. Tyrant rice cake monster, whom are you going to catch? Chu Wanning thought Mo Ran was acting strange these past few days. First it was Grandmaster Mo who stayed awake in the middle of the night, pressing Gaota down while being stark naked. Then there was Taxi and June. He shut himself mysteriously inside the kitchen for half a day saying that he was making dumplings, but when lunchtime came, he didn't even have flour to serve. When he asked him what he was doing inside the kitchen for so long, he answered that he was contemplating about life. What was even more odd was that since Taxi and June appeared only every 3 days, he would normally spend the day stuck close to Chu Wanning. Although he would occasionally go down the mountain on his own to do God's knew what, he would ensure to come back before dinner, normally bringing home a jar of good wine or a box of snacks which he would bashfully hand over to Chu Wanning. Today was quite different. Since there was no dumplings come noontime, they only have some boiled noodles. After lunch, Taxi and June declared that he has to go out. Chu Wanning then asked, what do you want to eat for this evening? Let me cook dinner tonight. Taxi and June hesitated for a moment. He looked torn as if he was engaged in a fierce internal struggle. At long last he said as if under great strain, no, this venerable one will come back very late tonight. You don't have to wait. Go to bed early. Chu Wanning opened his phoenix eyes wide. What is this? Is this the so-called 7th year itch? But 7 years haven't seemed to pass yet, or has it? The thing was, Chu Wanning has completely forgot about his own coming birthday. It was probably due to the fact that Chu Wanning didn't think that his birthday was a particularly remarkable thing. When he was a child and was with Huizui in Wuibei Temple, he would normally receive some small things and sweet pastries on this day during the first few years. Each time, he was very happy to have a wooden sword to play with and sweet snack to eat, so he would look over to the monk, smiling as he said, thank you Shizun. Shizun treats me very well. Huizui would then look back at him with a complicated expression on his face. At that time, Chu Wanning didn't know that it was because of the guilt that he was bearing in his heart. Later, after a certain year, Huizui suddenly stopped giving him birthday gifts. Of course, he was still given snack and other things. The monk would pull them out as if by magic from his broad and elegant sleeves, but it was not necessary to mark the day of his birth. Chu Wanning thought that once he grew up, it would not be necessary to celebrate his birthday every year. Once, he asked his Shizun if it was wrong to cherish his birthday celebration, so after a while, his Shizun looked at the evergreen giant cypress tree at Wuibei Temple and touched the head of Chu Wanning as he said, yes, Wanning is very big now. In a few years, he will ascend. At that time, he did not look into Chu Wanning's eyes when he said these words, he just kept looking at the sinking sun. A bright red reflection of the horizon was in the monk's eyes. Like blood. At that time, Chu Wanning had no reason to relate his Shizun's complex facial expression to that of guilt. He has not seen much of the world. Though he had read many books, he could not find the right word to describe his facial expression. At that time, he only thought that his Shizun's expression seemed half cruel and half sad. He didn't know why Shizun had such expression when he mentioned his ascension, not knowing that it was due to repressed guilt and endless sorrow. He stood up while the guilty man remained sitting next to him. He courageously touched the guilty man's bald head and coaxed the monk in front of him clumsily. Don't be unhappy, Shizun. When I ascend, I will give you my birthday. Huizui stiffened and then dropped his head. At that time, Chu Wanning could no longer see his face as it became covered with shadows. Half drowning with guilt, the monk laughed hoarsely and said, "No grown-up man can celebrate birthdays, only children can." After a pause, he got up before Chu Wanning could say anything more. The broad monk's robes floated in the evening breeze. At that time, the monk's figure was so tall. When he stood up, he covered the blood-stained ray of the sinking sun that fell on Chu Wanning. "It's getting late. Your SHIZUN'S still have much to do. You should go back and study some more." He then left without looking back. Later, after a long period of 20 years, Chu Wanning had never again received a happy birthday greeting. No one had expressed wishes that he would have more birthdays, nor wish him well for the rest of his life. Until his retirement in Nanping Mountains. Until the time when he finally achieved stability in his own life. Not until Mo Ran learned of his birthday and sincerely wished to celebrate each birthday to make up for the past years. Unfortunately, it was too late. Chu Wanning have long became used to ignoring his own birthday, which he used to spend by his lonesome self in the previous years. It even came to a point that he would completely forget all about it. Elder Yu Heng, who had forgotten his own birthday, frowned as he looked at the empty courtyard and fell into deep thought. What happened to Mo Ran? Was there anything he's been unhappy about lately? Or was there something big going on outside? Otherwise, no matter whether it was Grandmaster Mo or Taxian Jun, they were both acting very strange these days. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat SHIZUN. Extra chapters. SHIZUN'S birthday. Fighting for affection, part 6. In the afternoon, there were still 8 hours before Chu Wanning's birthday. Taxian Jun landed firmly on the beam of the sect leader's study. He couldn't help but cheer for himself in his heart. Time was tight and he was the only one in the world who could come and go as he pleased. After all, it was impossible to fly so fast on a sword. No one could travel so far in such a short time, but it was different for himself. He could use the gate of space. Taxian Jun was so proud of himself. You need to catch a human of the highest level, like Zhang, yeah, Chen, sect leader Zhang, to exchange for it. The words of the tyrant Osman, thus rice cake monster, still rang in his ears. At that time, the ever-vigilant Taxian Jun seriously inquired, what is this living person of highest level? According to the Fey world's Osman, thus rice cake monster heavenly way, there are levels of human depending on the demon clan's level of difficulties in capturing them. Capturing them? Taxian Jun gave a cold hum in his heart. It depends on who gets out of the horse. For him, it was not difficult to capture Jiangshi of Gaiyuye sect. He looked down from the rafters painted with gold and vermilion. Jiangshi looked happy and content. He hated being in contact with other people, and therefore, there was no one else in the room but him. He was quietly reading books by the window. Jiangshi has been badly injured during the world calamity and has been in poor health since then. He was originally someone with a manly stature and dignity, but since he spent months being bedridden, he lost a lot of weight. Now he became quite thinner with a much paler complexion. That he has lost a bit of that austere stature, but instead appeared to be a frail and fragile beauty. It's not that the Taxian Jun doesn't know how to appreciate beauty and knew for a fact that Zhang Yuchen is indeed a rare beauty. However, he was someone who has seen plenty of beautiful people in his life and therefore would not feel pity for a fragile beauty. Taxian Jun, who did not know how to pity a frail jade, looked at Zhang Yuchen for a while and finally found an angle, took out the wooden box in his arms, clicked it open and said, "Go ahead and get whatever you wanted to have." He threw the box in a curve, aiming for the guan in the back of Jiangshi's head. In his imagination, once the box touches Jiangshi's head, a whip-like white light would come out of the box to snatch Zhang Yuchen quickly. Then the lid will swiftly close with a bang, the box would vibrate as if someone was struggling in it, and then the box would calmly settle down. And that's it. The highest level Jiangshi of Gaiyuye sect was captured, and then he would get his flowering rain cloud. Unfortunately, when the wooden box was about to touch Jiangshi, the seemingly sick Zhang Yuchen, as if swept away, suddenly disappeared from where he was sitting. Then a flowing green and gold robes made of silk and satin suddenly flashed in the middle of the study. It was a perfect evasion. The box fell to ground. Jiangshi stared at it and raised his head gloomily as he asked, "What are you doing?" Before he could even finish the question, Taxian Jun jumped down from the beams and waved his palm. He summoned Jiangui and used the scarlet vine whip to swipe it straight towards Jiangshi. Jiangshi's expression changed as he immediately swept his sleeves to avoid the second attack. Taxian Jun sneered and said, "The first and the second time is fine, but let's see if you can still run away from the third one." Jiangshi was actually still recovering from a serious illness. In the other life, he was heavily bullied by this emperor. Jiangshi had dealt with him with all sort of tricks but was finally subdued with an overwhelming violence. At this moment, Jiangshi was actually caught off guard. He was out of breath and was still feeling very weak. Under such circumstances, it would be indeed impossible to avoid Taxian Jun's third attack. When the scarlet vine whip struck again, Jiangshi could have evaded it, but a sudden sweetness clogged up his throat. His sudden movement earlier to evade Taxian Jun's attack aggravated his sickness as the blood in his throat choked him up. A single mistake could make a master lose. Jiangshi was instantly bound within the vine whip, lost his balance and suddenly fell to the ground. He gasped, raised his apricot eyes to fiercely gaze at his attacker. However, when he saw the face of Taxian Jun, he was instantly shocked. "It's you. Don't worry, this venerable one won't kill." Before he had finished speaking, he heard Jiangshi angrily asked, "Who sent you to humiliate me? Why would this venerable one want to humiliate you?" Taxian Jun asked curiously. Jiangshi tried to break free from the vine whip as he turned blue from anger. "Did Xuemeng send you here?" Taxian Jun was even more surprised. "Xuemeng? What does this got to do with Xuemeng? Why would he want to humiliate you?" Jiangshi bit his thin lips and stopped talking. A few strands of hair clung to his forehead over his icy pale face. Under the dark light of the study, a pair of apricot eyes stared intently at Taxian Jun. "Old man, wait a minute." Taxian Jun frowned and suddenly felt as if something was amiss. "Why did this venerable one suddenly feel that your eyes are kind of familiar? It seems that there's somebody very similar." Jiangshi went stiff. He immediately turned his face, closed his eyes and stopped talking. Taxian Jun absent-mindedly stretched out his hand to turn Jiangshi's face, but before his fingertips could touch Jiangshi's chin, he suddenly thought that it was not appropriate. This action was somewhat ambiguous. Although he had no other intention than to study Zhang Yuchen's eyes again, Zhang Yuchen would probably be furious if he do that. So, he quickly took back his hand and wiped his fingertips exaggeratedly on his clothes to prove his innocence. Forget it, who cares who Jiangshi resembled anyways? He was not that interested in Zhang Yuchen's affairs. All he needed to do was to grab him and shove him inside the box so he could get his flowering rain cloud. Thus, switching his curiosity off to concentrate with the matters at hand, he raised his hand to command Jiangui to drag Zhang Yuchen inside the box of thoughts. How could Jiangshi allow himself to be treated this way? He furiously bellowed, "Let me go." Taxian Jun did not listen to him at all. After commanding the vine, he put his arms around Jiangshi and laughed playfully. "Once you're in, this venerable one will let you go. It's quite spacious inside. Rest assured that this venerable one is not interested in you in any ways. Tomorrow, the task would be finished. This venerable one would set you free then. Are you looking for death?" Jiangshi was so angry that his straight nose was scrunching up. He wanted to continue his nagging, but the whip vine was dragging him into the box. The end of it was even poking him on the back. "Just go inside, will you? You." Jiangxi's scolding were cut in half when a ray of light appeared and he was absorbed inside the box of thoughts by a powerful spiritual energy. Taxian Jun proudly bent over to pick up the wooden box and snorted, "You think you can go against this venerable one? You have no chance even if you all band together." Just after saying this, he suddenly heard footsteps outside the study. As Taxian Jun was wondering who could it be, the footstep came closer and stopped right in front of the door of the study. The person behind the door tapped twice softly and said, "Father, it's time to take your medicine." "Oh, if it isn't Zhang Yuchen's adopted son." Taxian Jun let out a restrained smile. This could be a little troublesome. If the son learned that his father had been abducted, wouldn't he fight him over it? Although he was happy to fight again, it was more important to prepare the birthday gift for Chu Wanning. If he can avoid a fight here, it would be the best course of action. Thus, before that person decided to come in, Taxian Jun opened a gate of space and sent himself to the nearby Yangzhou city. Outside the sect leader's study at the Gaiyuye sect, Jiangxi's adopted son knocked on the door for a long while. After not receiving any response, he frowned, hesitated for a moment, then coughed softly and said, "Please forgive the intrusion." He then proceeded to open the door. After entering the room, he opened his gentle eyes in astonishment and called out, "Father." What he found inside was an empty room. A volume of books was lying in front of the window, the ink on the paper has not even dried yet. However, no trace of Jiangxi could be found inside the room. There was no time. There were only a few hours to go before Chu Wanning's birthday. Because the streets and alleyways were crowded and full of people, Taxian Jun decided to take a rest on top of the lofty Wenfan Pagoda of Yangzhou City. As he leaped upwards, his clothes fluttered around its golden pink roof. Down on the road, the streets were cramped with pedestrians, making it difficult to see far ahead, but standing on top of the tower, he could clearly see the whole of the city. He yawned as he put his arm behind his head. He lay down on top of the roof tile and looked at the reddening clouds up in the sky. Things were going well. He had captured Jiangxi, thus the flowering rain cloud was secured. Chu Wanning would definitely like it. It's early enough. He could still catch some more highest level people. With this in mind, Taxian Jun reached into his sleeves and took out that book made out of tree bark that he had taken from the tyrant SHIZUN'S rice cake monster. He turned over the page to where the list supposedly was. He turned the book over and squinted at it a little bit as he made sense of the twisted fey characters that was written in the book. The list of highest level people was quite long. As he read, he touched his chin and murmured to himself, "But this book doesn't have much information." It only listed the cultivators that the SHIZUN'S rice cake monsters were observing, but it didn't have information on how the fey creatures were going to capture them. But then he thought, it's fine. As the tyrant rice cake monsters say, these highest level people can be exchanged with the best stuff since they have the best spiritual energy. As long as they were captured, the exchange would be good. Jiangxi, Ma Yun, Elder Xianji. He was reading the name of the people in the list and suddenly saw that himself and Chu Wanning was amongst them. Taxian Jun got a little angry that he thought that these rogue and lowly spirits dared to spy on this venerable one and the Baidu immortal. How bold! But on second thought, if the two of them were not in the list, it would mean they were being looked down upon. Upon realizing this thought, Taxian Jun got angry again. He went through the list of the highest level people in the book and thought, since Dobao Manor is the nearest here, it's better to grab Ma Yun first and see what can be exchanged with him. As soon as decided what to do next, he immediately flew down from the Wenfan Pagoda with every intention of capturing the manor master of Dobao Manor. However, before he can create the array for the gate of space, he heard a familiar voice behind him. Hey? If it isn't Mo Xiang. Taxian Jun was shocked. He took off his cloak. Just who is this eyesore that he could figure out his identity despite of the blurring spell he has on? When he turned around, he saw a handsome man with long pale golden hair and jasper-colored eyes standing outside the painted yellow courtyard wall of Wenfan Monastery. His skin was of pale ivory color, whiter than the magnolia flower blooming in the trees out of the courtyard wall. The blond man with deep facial features had his hands on his back as he looked at him with a smile. What a coincidence! I didn't expect to find Mo Xiang in Yangzhou. Mei Hangxiu. Mei Hangxiu smiled and said, well, long time no see. Taxian Jun did not like Mei Hangxiu much. In the other life, he and Xuemeng gravely injured him. He could ignore Xuemeng, but he was still angry with Mei Hangxiu, and he knew that Xuemeng was also not happy with this fellow. However, Taxian Jun was not very interested in anybody else that is not Chu Wanning, and thus did not know much about the brothers Mei Hangxiu. He could not immediately distinguish between the twins from their expressions and gestures. So, he wrinkled his brows and looked at the man up and down. When all he could determine was that the man was blonde, he just asked, "Are you the younger or older one?" Mei Hangxiu was very clever. Naturally, he was different from Taxian Jun. Within a few words and a few expressions, he had already determined which personality was in front of him. And as what he was scared of, the personality of the one in front of him was that of Taxian Jun of the other world and not of Grandmaster Mo, whom he was more familiar with. If he had realized this earlier, he would not have stopped him to say hello. But now that things have come to this, Mei Hangxiu could only smile, but the enthusiasm in his eyes has faded a lot. He tried to deflect by answering, yeah, I didn't ask Mo Xiang whether he was the older or younger one. Why would Mo Xiang ask me this? Who's old? You're old, Taxian Jun said. Mei Hangxiu shook his head and laughed. How come you're all alone in Yangzhou? What about Grandmaster Chu, is he not with you? This reminded Taxian Jun of the matter at hand. He came to Yangzhou to catch Jiangshi. Jiangshi is of the highest level and can be exchanged with flowering rain cloud. Isn't Mei Hangxiu on the list of highest level people, too? Taxian Jun's eyes glowed brightly. It seems that before catching Ma Yun, he would be able to catch another highest level first. Mei Hangxiu was very observant. Upon seeing the changes in Taxian Jun's expression, he couldn't help taking a step back and took a defensive stance with the urge to draw out his weapon. However, Taxian Jun was much faster than he was. All he saw was a dark flash and Taxian Jun was already upon him. Mo Xiang, you dash. Before Mei Hangxiu could say more, he saw Taxian Jun opened a rugged wooden box before he pressed it against his head. What is it? Taxian Jun said, just get in here. Mo Xiang dash. A golden light flashed. Mei Hangxiu disappeared. Taxian Jun quickly closed the box lid. His handsome face showed a malicious smile, ambitious purplish-black eyes glinted triumphantly as he said, I got another one. He now had two. How could Grandmaster Mo's tree house, shell sofa, and flowering shrub compare to what he could exchange with a group of highest-level people? With this, Grandmaster Mo's ambitions of earning Chu Wanning's favors would disappear like a ghost. He shook the box satisfactorily, created the array for the gate of space and went to Dobao Manor to catch the third person, Ma Yun. At the same time, inside the box of thoughts, the recently snatched Mei Hangxiu fell on his knees unsteadily. He got up from the ground, coughed, dusted his robes and looked around with his blue eyes. As far as he can see, it was a fairyland with mountains and rivers, as the trees and the plants in here didn't seem to exist in the mundane world. Flower petals were floating in the sky, a lotus pond was flowing with gold, the cottages were exquisite and dreamy. There was even a large field of flowers where a tinkling of elegant music seemed to be coming from within the flowers itself. This place, just where was he? As he vigilantly looked around, he suddenly saw someone lying on the ground. That person was all tied up, gracelessly crumbled to the ground, clothes stained with dust, and seemed to be unable to move at all. Mei Hangxiu was someone who had been with numerous people and had an uncanny sense when it comes to beauty. Even though he was very confused and the other person was a bit distanced from him, he still instinctively knew that the person was very beautiful just by looking at the person's silhouette alone. Just, who is this beauty? End chapter.